people walked in like Henrietta Lyle said, "Oh, this is so beautiful."
We're very lucky.
So it's a long story to this debate. So I guess we should just get started with the adoption of the Borough Board agenda, or do we go around and?
Yeah.
First thing, okay, are there any questions?
Any questions? All right, so you have the Borough Board agenda before you. All in favor of adopting the Borough Board agenda, motion to approve?
The property takes up most of the block.
Second?
Spanning from York
All
Avenue
in
to
favor?
FDR Drive. Ready,
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion carries. Next is the adoption of the March 19, 2015 Borough Board minutes. I didn't see any emails in the interim for any friendly amendments or corrections to the minutes. So motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Next we have, let me see, do we have quorum for the vote, to take the vote? Yeah, actually, we do. Yeah. So next we have, last week, Joe Garber presented our office presented the Manhattan Borough Board Budget Priorities Report fiscal year 2016. And many of you have an opportunity to see the report and read it over the last month and consult with your executive boards and full boards. So before us today, we have a vote on the adoption of the fiscal year 2016 Manhattan Borough Budget Priorities Report.
It's not, it's just so you
Any
know.
discussion?
Well, those of you who haven't seen it, it wasn't long. I mean, I think what we did was we just talked about some of the priorities that we've been focusing on, like, obviously the issue of mental health is something that's important to us in the schools, technology in the schools. One of the issues, of course, is that the infrastructure, as Ben Kalos knows, in the schools is an issue. It's very nice to have new computers, but if you can't make them move in a quick fashion, it really doesn't do much good. Welcome, everybody. And we talked about homeless services. That's the issue of trying to find money for people who need housing. And then some issues regarding housing, the challenge of 421A. I think those, we didn't have a lot in here because I don't think many people read it, to be honest with you. And it wasn't worth putting tons. So the issue mostly is, you know, we'll talk later when I speak a little bit more about the budget process and how we're moving in terms of capital. But those are just some issues. Next year, if you want, we can put more issues in. I'm just not sure it's worth a lot of time because people don't pay a lot of attention to this. I know. It's charter mandated, so. Any questions?
Any questions or discussion on budget priorities report? Okay, so Jim, you want me to do this through roll call, or we could do it through?
Yeah, through all.
Okay, so this will be a roll call vote on the adoption of the fiscal year 2016 Manhattan Borough budget priorities report. Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer.
Yeah, aye. This,
Mark?
pull up a chair, Helen, there's a chair. You know how to pull up a chair.
CM Chen, CM Mendez, CM Johnson, CM Garatnik, CM Kalos,
Yes.
CM Rosenthal,
Yes.
CM Levine,
Yes.
CM Mark Viverito, Speaker Mark Viverito, CM Dickens, Rodriguez, Catherine McVeigh Hughes.
I'm sitting in for Anthony Nusfalo, and we vote yes.
You're on the executive committee?
Anthony Nusfalo, Vice Chair,
Okay,
CB1.
okay, thank you. Community Board 2,
Yes.
Community Board 3,
Yes.
Community Board 4,
Yes.
Community Board 5,
Yes.
Community Board 6,
Yes.
Community Board 7,
Yes.
Community Board 8,
Yes.
Community Board 9,
Yes.
Community Board 10,
Yes.
Community Board 11, Community Board 12.
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion carries. Now we have a presentation on the Community Board Urban Planning Professionals Bill, Intro 732, a local law to amend the New York City Charter in relation to making urban planning professionals available to community boards. And presenter Lynn Cavos.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I want to just thank Gale Brewer for her commitment to the Borough Board, for her commitment to landmarks, for actually having matzah and kosher wine at the landmarks event that she hosted during Passover, and to just having an open process. and the respecting the democratic process. And although we may agree 99% of the time, occasionally we will disagree on specific items. So by way of background, I was on Community Board 8. I came up through the community boards. We're going to be doing a hearing on community board related items on April 30th. Here to speak about introduction number 732. During our preliminary budget hearings, we had members of multiple boards come forward asking for additional funding. So we've been working actually for the past year on fulfilling a promise from the 1970s, from the charter revision that Councilmember Vaca had advised me about, which was that community boards were supposed to have dedicated urban planners. That being said, the borough president, specifically in Manhattan, has gone a long way towards trying to fulfill that in lieu of having the actual funding there through the graduate students program. And I am a huge fan of internships and continue to try to have more interns than Gale Brewer, but I continue to fail. It is a very hard task, and we run out of space. But I think that there is a quintessential difference between having an urban professional graduate student and somebody who's getting paid full-time to do it. So the legislation amends the charter. It is a charter amendment that would not require a vote. And so the charter already requires that there be staffing provided for environmental analysis, technical assistance, and so we are providing an additional professional planner. Hopefully that would be an urban planner and it would go to the borough presidents, and it would create a pool, and they would be split amongst 4 boards. This is legislation, so it is subject to change, and we hope that you're willing to either give us feedback today or at the public hearing. I'm open to doing 1 per board, but currently the language is 1 per 4 boards. And the way that it would essentially work as the boards have different land use items coming through, they would they would be able to go to the borough president, and the borough president would have a pool of urban planners that would be by right belonging to the boards. They might have to split between each other, but at least they would be there. This is a way of trying to create a mandate without being affected by the checks and balances system for additional funding in the budget, specifically for urban planners for community boards. I think that is the presentation.
Could you explain why we don't need a vote for that kind of charter amendment?
Yes, because there are certain charter amendments that are deemed to be under the charter a change in powers. So if we were to take away the mayor's control over public schools, that would be seriously taking away his powers, but oftentimes we're able to make rudimentary changes to the charter without having to go to a charter amendment. Also, additionally, funny enough, the Assembly and the Senate can amend our charter without having to go to a vote. So,
Scary thought.
I know it's the discussion and the questions. I'll start with.
Just to say, I think 1 per 4 boards is really good, because I'm thinking about 9, 10, 11, 12. This way the person will know everything about the certain areas, and he or she can help, in terms of guiding us. So I think it's a good idea to have 1 per 4 boards. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Yes.
But I think I need 4 for 1 board. I'm not kidding. I'm just like in some neighborhoods. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was my turn.
Yeah, no, hold on. I have in the back, and then Vicky, and then you, Christine.
Okay, sorry.
And then Hassan.
Hi, I'm Frances from Councilmember Dickens' office. She said sorry she couldn't be here, but one of the questions that she has is, with the board's budget already being very tight, how would this urban planning be funded to be, especially if you want 1 per board, 1 per 4 boards, how it would be funded, and how it would impact like the local community boards and the funding, the resources they already have. It's already strenuous, especially trying to do meetings at night and covering for that.
Yeah.
we're currently in a budget surplus. When I got elected, we had $73 billion in our expense budget. We're now at $77.8 billion in our expense budget. So we are more flush than usual. And so what particularly came up during the preliminary budget hearings around community boards was that this is a time that it's great that community boards have been baselined, but now we are seeing development like we have never seen before, and now is a time to invest. By creating the mandate, our hope is that this would create a requirement over and above the existing funding. My hope is that this does not become a situation where it actually comes out of the board's budgets, and that's the way we actually wrote it, the way it is. So instead of saying each board must have a planner, we're saying that in order to fulfill the charter mandates, we're going to assign them to the community board borough president offices. So that is the way around having to worry about taking away from the limited resources that the community boards
So the
have.
concern that I have, and again, I want everybody to have more money. Let me be clear, I fought in the council and head of government operations not to have the budgets cut when we were dealing with the Bloomberg administration. I would argue for everybody to get more money. That would be a priority. However, just so you know, if you give the money to us, which the way you have to do it, I think, is in order to deal with the charter issues, then I'm just saying, glad to give it to you, but if we have who's supervising this person? It should be you. But if the money goes to us, then we have to supervise, to be honest with you, legally. And then if there's a different disagreement, which there may or may not be, we're not all gonna be around forever, how does that work? I'm just saying, that's a question, because I think that you should be doing this as the borough president, whomever the borough president is. You know, and Board 7 may say, well, we want Y. And then how does that urban planner deal? I'm just saying, that's the issue. It's more of a governance issue than anything else, but it is a governance issue. So I don't know, that's a concern I have, just, you know. I want everybody to have more money, I want everybody to have urban planners, or whatever you wanna do with your money.
So I agree, it is going to be a governance issue, and I think with strong borough presidents like yourself, you'll be able to manage that. And I will admit that there may come borough presidents where those urban planners are not necessarily in sync with the boards to which they report, and ultimately they will, but we were unable to craft legislation that would create planners in the board offices that reported directly to the board. Through this, the board would go to the borough president and say, I want this person to do X, Y, Z, which is frankly a very similar scenario to what we have in the city council, which is the committee staff doesn't actually work for us, they work for the speaker. They work for the speaker on the central staff budget, and they work for us at the discretion of the speaker. And it's same thing in Albany and Congress and other places.
We had Vicky recognized and then Christine Bertin next.
My first question had to do with financing, which has been, but I wanted to make a real pitch for the one for every board. I know Christine is going to do the same thing, but with the amount of development that's going on. And originally, Ben, wasn't the original legislation proposed for one for?
That's what we were pushing for. It looks like as drafted, it's 4 per board, and so when we do our A version, if we're able to pass this with widespread support, it would just be hoped that the testimony that we get is asking for 1 per board.
I'm not familiar with how.
1 per board.
4 per borough?
Well, different.
1 per 4.
So we have 12 boards in Manhattan,
Right.
but Staten Island, I guess, might get
4 for Manhattan. That
we
would
would
take.
get 4 for
3.
Manhattan.
Right.
3.
3 for Manhattan.
3 for Manhattan.
3,
1
that's right.
for Staten Island. I don't know the number of community boards in the other boroughs.
16 and 14.
Yeah, so.
I'm just
31.
curious that, I don't know if it works the same way in the council, but usually you ask for more in the
Yes.
hopes that you're gonna get something, you don't ask for less than what you want. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious as to why it isn't a push for 1 for every board, and then we have to settle for less.
It was an oversight, and we'll be correcting.
Okay. Thank
Christine
you.
Bertin?
So same concern, I mean, you know, maybe, I mean, right now in our neighborhood, it's just totally overwhelming, and then the knowledge, I mean, I know you're saying 1 for 4, but the knowledge is really very local, and you really need to know that neighborhood, and there is a lot of institutional knowledge there that is not transferable from board to board and not usable. The second thing is that the software and other things that are needed in order to make that person effective is very expensive. The GIS costs $4,000, and computers, and all those things. So as we are right now, getting the intern and then saying, well, where's the software? And now we have to scramble and go around. We don't even have the software, the money to give the software. So it's really a lot of money, and we need to have to give them the tools, because the person is not just enough anymore.
So actually, I'm just thinking back to how we ended up at 1 and 4. I think as we were talking to different borough presidents in different boroughs, Manhattan, we are very development centric. I think as I was talking to people in other boroughs, they were telling me how that there are some boards
Some boards have never had a ULUR.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so their pushback when we're talking about the entire city
Right.
was just,
I was like, what planet?
Right.
so the idea was by grouping it also limited cost. So if we were to do a planner for every board, it would cost about $3 million, which is a drop in the bucket compared
Yes.
to the amount of billions of dollars in development we're seeing. By 1 to 4, that actually drops the cost to less than $1 million, which makes it almost a rounding error in a $77 billion budget. But I think it's a balance of the equities, and whether it's 1 per board or a lower fraction, I think I will want to hear from folks, and then hopefully when we have the hearing and we hear from the boards throughout the 5 boroughs, we will get a consensus. Sadly, we must legislate for the entire city versus saying in Manhattan you get 12 and in another borough you get fewer.
We have Sandro next.
Yeah.
And then you. And
I
then
just really quickly, I mean, as you well know, we have a lot of ULURP issues coming up on the east side of Manhattan. And I want to echo, I mean, I'm very concerned that this is, that funding is contingent upon whoever the president is, whoever, it seems very unsure footing for the future and for planning. And it would be terrible if we actually were to get some resources that we desperately need to augment the urban planning efforts that actually the borough president has been working with us on, and then all of a sudden that just was pulled out from under us, a year or 2 down the road when there's a change in administrations.
Ultimately, whoever the borough president at the time is will have to hire these people. They will have to have degrees that will limit the ability for patronage there, and at least whoever there will have a minimum competency level, and they will have to do something for 40 hours a week. So hopefully they will be able to continue, and inertia may carry. What I forgot to mention with regard to the GIS computers and software, I'm happy to work with the borough president. My understanding from DoIT and other contracts is that the city purchased tons of software in the previous administration and didn't use all of it. They had a purchase first, use later mentality. So there's a lot of off-the-shelf software that is still sitting on the shelf that we may be able to provide access to. So
And it's white kind.
yeah.
Well, it's what kind, and it's what's the version. I mean, like in 2 years.
Yeah.
So we are making a law for the long term, right? Not for today.
We'll get this GIS, we gotta get it straightened out. So
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Community Board 1 echoes what has been said here. We've had so much activity, as many communities have, with conversions of buildings, new development, that we found that skill set invaluable. We found it invaluable at our level because of that institutional knowledge, knowing the unique character of different neighborhoods. And rather than do it on a project-by-project basis, a holistic view of the community is very important. And I hear that some boards have no need for this, which is surprising, but based on the activity in this borough, I can't see how we could live without it. And you bring up an excellent point about this being put out there and not institutionalized enough that it becomes a skill set that the boards rely on.
One piece I did want to note that nobody's brought up yet, but some criticism I've received is, well, why not just put urban planners on the community boards? And we've actually started to do that.
They can't work full time.
Exactly.
Right.
So I forgive the straw person I just put up that Gale knocked down.
That's a totally different. No.
We have Toby next. And then
Yeah, so I just want to be a little contrarian. It's a habit I have sometimes. I actually like the idea of than being in the borough president's office and being supervised there, because, you know, I know every board is different, but we don't have professional supervisory capability, and I also think, you know, 12 planners in the borough of Manhattan is a lot. And I also have there's an odd thing, is that, you know, I kind of have a life experience that the best things happen when you get lost. And I feel that way about community boards as well, that sometimes the best things we do is when we don't know what we're talking about. We put things out there that come from the heart of the community, the feeling of the community, and too much knowledge sometimes constrains that. Now you're not going to say things that that so-called could never happen. Well, we've had things that could never happen actually happen because it wakes people up. So I think that yes, it's good to have expertise. It's also good to be the soul of the community and not be a professional agency, but a volunteer motivated agency. And I think there's a little bit of possibility for being too professional.
Just going back, similar to what this gentleman said, and about the governance issue, if it's one per board or one per 4 board, how the legislation currently is, where would the person be located? Will it be just one day in one community board, one day in the other? It goes back to accountability and supervision, how would one person, I mean, the person will have to be traveling with their own stuff to make sure that they meet the requirements of each board. And then just thinking about future, what if all 4 boards at the same time are going through a process, which now with so many developments are going on, how would the person, would it require more staff? Would it be requiring more volunteers? How the governance would be as to where would they require to be in one place more? Like, how would they mandate that when there's like no supervision, or if it's through the Manhattan Borough President's office, or if it's superseded by the community boards? How would that person divide itself up?
So I think that again it comes to, so that there's a balance of powers. So the council gets to set policies. We can sometimes try to force mandates on the budgeting process. However, ultimately, there's a point where we can no longer legislate, and I would probably draw the line at being able to dictate the day-to-day activities of one of my 350,000 employees. So I think the way the format is it would end up going to each borough president's office. The borough president would then either decide that they wanted to house them at their respective borough hall, or might say, I want to have whatever it is people propose. Ultimately, I also think that part of the reason for having a pool is that each board is not facing a ULURP at the same time all the time. And so by having it assigned within the borough president's office, there's an idea that if you have 3 or 6 or 12, you can use them to cover needs as they come up. So if one board doesn't have a ULURP, but 3 boards do, even though one person might be assigned to that board that doesn't currently have a ULURP, you might be able to pull that person to assist with the other 3 boards and move people around as there is need. And you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, but would it, it's just thinking, would it if a person does under the governance, because the way you're kind of stating it, to work with the borough president's office, then that person will be a staffer of the borough president. Would it then, it comes back to governance, how would it work with and it's not just this, I mean in future borough president, how would that urban planner that's for the community board now be pushing the agenda of the borough president's office?
Right, and I think that is a valid concern, and I don't believe it's a concern with this borough president,
Oh,
but
no,
yes,
not with this
laws
one.
are long-standing, so ultimately I think my worst nightmare would be if this became just another patronage position, but I think that the degree of professional requirement makes it a lot harder, and then ultimately I think it's just a matter of leadership, and as you build leadership, people become accustomed to certain type of resources. And my hope is that if a borough president came in and took the urban planners away from the community and used it to either to just pay them to sit there and collect a paycheck so that we could get unbridled development, my hope would be that the 12 boards of Manhattan would cry bloody murder. And
I think that you need, I mean, I have to say, been knows, I'm a little skeptical of this, but I'm listening to you, and God knows you need staff, and if we can't get funding, maybe this is the way, but one of the issues would be some kind of board oversight over these 4 people, because to be honest with you, and I wouldn't do this, but others might, is like keep them in the borough president's office to complement the land use division.
Yes.
And that's not what this is for. So whether, whatever the accountability mechanism is, and I don't know what it would be, normally it would be some kind of a advisory group, but maybe it's a borough board report on I don't know, but it's something, so there's a little bit of a stick. I'm just saying, I don't know the mechanism.
Could do reporting or
Whatever.
oversight by the
You
borough
need,
board.
you need something that would be
Okay.
clear that these are community board staff people and not borough president in the terms of their work. Because believe me, that would be a concern I would have if nobody's doing oversight except the full board saying, where is my person? And who do I complain to?
Gale's been doing this for our borough president has been doing this for a very long time.
I just don't know what the
So-
mechanism, but I know you need something that shows where these folks are going and has some kind of reporting mechanism.
So we could put subject to oversight by the borough boards. Is that a big enough stick, or?
Like the community board.
But I think the entity is a borough board, so and you're most, but something, just, I would throw that in. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just
but I'm worried
gonna
about the open
play
space.
devil's advocate just a little bit, but by having these, I actually do look at it and think that if you're going this route, that a pool might actually be productive in certain ways. That way, if you've got a couple of projects on the east side at the same time, even if they happen, if it just so happens that, boards 6 and 8 have the same planner, but if you've got a pool, you may be able to provide, 2 people to cover these 2 projects that happen to be the largest project at a given time. In addition, if you're housing them in an office within the borough president, then you're really talking about having software within that office of the borough president's office, not necessarily 12 sets of software for 3 employees. So it's interesting to talk about having the borough board oversight to make sure that the boards aren't being cheated out of their fair share. But I don't know if you have to have the person go to each individual office, as opposed to, sitting there and spending part of the day on this project, part of the day on that project, without part of the day involving commuting.
No, they have to be local.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. The current status of the land use staff versus, how is this arrangement gonna look with the current land use division within the borough president's office versus this?
You know more
Right now,
about
we have, I think it's 6 people headed up by Jim
Right.
Harris, and they work, it's very specific to the ULURP process.
Right.
Or to the pre-planning ULURP process.
So it seems to have worked really well, I mean.
Well, but I'm just saying, we can't do,
Right.
Jessica Bodine and
Right.
Penny Ryan have a question about X.
Right.
We could talk, but it would be much better to have somebody
Got it.
specifically to say,
Research.
blah, 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 right?
Research.
So that would, you would hopefully have harbor view, whatever, very specific to knowledge, it would just be more in-depth knowledge for that board.
Right. 'Cause
I don't quite know,
Yeah, I just think from our perspective, speaking about sort of our district manager, I think would wanna feel like a part of that process. And I think that whatever we can do with the legislation you're proposing, if we can somehow have the board oversight piece of it included, and it would make it a little bit more palatable to.
Okay, I think I can do borough board oversight. But I just wanna make sure that I'm taking the feedback here, but the official process is, you can either, if the borough board issues a resolution or a letter that everyone signs on to, that can go into our record. But I just need something in the record so that as we are negotiating, as we are drafting, the city council and our staff has the benefit of hearing your voice. Yes.
Can I make a suggestion that we call the district managers and get their ideas about it? Because they will be the one supervising, and they may have some ideas of how is the best way to organize that you know,
Poll the district manager?
yeah, on the ideas and say, how would you manage that? What's the best way for you to organize? Because they are going to be the day-to-day responsibility.
Maybe that could be taken up at the cabinet?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
Borough
Yeah.
Service Cabinet.
Service cabinet.
Yeah.
Just curious, what's the April 30th deadline?
April 30th is when we're having a hearing on this legislation.
The hearing.
Right.
Okay, got it.
We're hearing two bills on April 30th. This is the bill that is on today's agenda.
The other bill is permanent.
Yes.
Oh.
However, that is not on the agenda.
Let's
I'd
not-
like to leave here alone.
Let's not get, let's not get
Presenting-
into
presenting
that.
this proposal and hearing feedback, have you heard anything about people saying, well, the city charter already provides for, the Department of City Planning to provide technical assistance to community boards around this, and they duplicate it?
I have not. I imagine it. I guess my question is, so when I was on the community board, I did not feel particularly supported by
No.
DCP. Is
But the
there a
language
feel
may,
that-
the language may be in the charter.
Fair.
I think the-
Yeah.
the language
But
may be
They're
does-
in the-
supporting the developers.
Fair enough. I guess one question, just as we get closer to wrapping up, can I just see a show of hands? So I'm gonna just count down. So who here thinks we should have 12 planners for 12 community boards in Manhattan?
Plus the more, you mean?
No, I'm gonna count it down. So hold on, there's 1,
Oh,
2,
of course.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, okay. And then how many
Plus three
people,
extras.
how many people if we were gonna do two for every, one for every two, so that would be 6 planners for boards, a pool of 6. Yeah, so it's 6.
But
So
this
that's-
is more of a I mean, it's more of a resource.
Where's the money be there?
Yeah.
Monday.
It's,
My vote is contingent on that. I mean,
Yeah.
But it's hard to.
I think we could also.
In a perfect world, it would be great if we each had our own.
Well, the other issue is, I don't want the borough president's office, we get the money, and then next year we have to take it out of our, that's another
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Oh, yeah.
So and then that goes back to the resource being there, as
Yeah.
you suggested, and then it's not, and sort of what Toby said, you really have to be careful on that, because
Yeah.
if it's not sustainable,
Then
it's
it's-
very hard on the person
Right.
and the quality of life for the office and the staff and so on. Like,
and then the last one I was gonna ask is just, as it currently written is, does anyone want 3 for the borough? So I no longer see that, so, okay.
How about 3 per office?
So so at that number, depending on what you pay the urban planner, you're looking at somewhere below $1.2 million in allocation, for the borough of Manhattan. Depending on whether we pay them $50,000, $80,000, or $100,000.
What would, I don't know what he mentioned earlier, but what would be the cost, if every, community board had, a planner? Did you talk about the cost?
So I just gave you the back of the envelope, which is about, it's gonna be under 1.2 million,
Citywide?
for, well, no, for, if we did all 59.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at somewhere between, it's gonna be under $5.9 million, probably around 3 or a little over 3 million, depending on, how much do we pay urban planners in the city? Does anyone know the, civil service title?
I mean, usually, yep.
Approximately 75,000 per annum.
So then, based on that number, I think it comes out to about a little over $3 million.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so very much.
Right, and the only other thing, just somebody asked, we do assign, we obviously don't have, our planners are assigned per board, but it's certainly several boards. Just so you know, somebody asked about how do we do it in the borough president's office. Planners, the few that we do have, do go per board, but it's not the intent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You did get out of your life, I thought you wouldn't.
Jim wanted me to mention or to consult with you if it was okay with you. We've gotten word that Councilmember Goradnik and some others on their way, so we wanted to keep the vote open so that when they arrive, they can vote on the budget, borough budget priorities.
Oh.
Okay? Thank you.
So my report is gonna be very, very short. I've got 2 things to say. One is fun, which is June 15th is the date that we're gonna have all of the community board members at the American Museum of Natural History, as we have in the past. And it's a lovely event that the museum does for us, so I just wanna let you know. Second, this is at Monday night, which is the 20th of April. At the Macaulay Center, which is on 67th Street, we're doing a teens night talking about sexual awareness and issues regarding sexual assault and so on. we're using the notion that has been discussed on the campus, but we're doing it with high school students. And we have some high school students that have organized it, and it's at 6 o'clock, and we'll make sure you get the email and the flyer. Just in terms of substantive issues. Now, I want to thank particularly the council members and all the elected officials, because as you know, and I know you got a copy, we sent a letter to the City Planning Commission regarding to contextual zoning. I have explained this to so many people, I'm so happy to be here because I don't have to explain it again. I spent 1 hour on the phone with a reporter yesterday explaining the difference between upzoning, inclusionary, and contextual. I probably understand it, you've understood it before, but the mayor has made it so confusing. Reporters don't understand it. So, but that letter, I think, had a huge impact, plus the fact that you all turned out. It was a huge, huge number of people who showed up at a hearing to talk to staff, because it's not an official city planning. And it was really bizarre for me to, I said, who are all these people? But it worked, because it gave us more time, and I think it provided a buzz about the discussion. So I really want to thank you, because contextual for Manhattan is a big deal. It's very different perhaps than other boroughs, or for us, it could make a big difference in the neighborhood. So I want to thank you tremendously. It was a great letter because you signed it. Number two, we're working on landmarking on all fronts. It's a challenging issue, but we've been dealing with the REBNY as well as the landmarks group. We've had them all in the room. They've agreed. There's some glitches, I know, in terms of how we're proceeding. There's one part of it that is already lost. We have a little problem with that. But generally, we're going to work on. I want to thank the council members for working with us on that. Budget process, we really tried to be as consultative as possible with the city council members, community boards in terms of the issue, taking your written material, talking individually, and we're going to do the best we can in terms of the budget. We have, this is capital specifically, and so we are trying really, really hard. We were able to do as many schools, not what everybody wants, but we're working hard on it, particularly on, we finally got Steve Simon to give us the parks. Don't put that in the minutes. In terms of schools, something very, always working on technology. We had a really exciting, about 80 principals showed up at all the tech community at Civic Hall. Civic Hall, as you may know, is on 20th Street and 5th Avenue. It's a Andrew Richet's place, as I call it, but it's basically a place for free events all night, all day in terms of tech, something that you might want to share with your community boards. And basically, we had an unbelievable discussion with all of the principals who were just looking to figure out, somebody who could help them navigate some of the tech world. And it was fun. It was a very different kind of discussion, and they had, I think it was really interesting to hear some of the comments. So we will circulate what came out of that. We're doing the same thing again with the arts. We've done one with all the arts groups uptown. We're going to do another one with the groups downtown, but all principals and all arts groups. And it's a nice way to mix and to try to have wine and cheese, but at the same time get some discussion going. Because the principals don't leave their schools and they don't have a sense like, oh, I already have arts, but oh my God, that Albert Ailey could come for free? Oh my goodness. That kind of discussion takes place. Go ahead.
Is there any way we could work with Civic Hall on doing something like a borough board meeting?
I think it'd be a great idea. We should definitely do a borough board meeting at Civic Hall. For those of you who have, it's just like a big, beautiful old building with tech everywhere.
It's on the central.
Where is it?
20th and 5th, on the second floor. Civic Hall, it's hard to describe. It's sort of a dream of two people who are raising money to keep it going, and they're doing a good job. Black Girls Code was there the other day, etc. There was a meeting with MAS, how to make New York City edgy, as if it's not already. But all these great ideas, we all had great ideas. So anyway, you can go online, it's all there. So those are my quick discussions. Now, a small business report, thank you. We did a small business report, which has gotten a lot of discussion going, and up and down, there is my belief, having worked on how do you save mom and pop for many years, is we need to have some movement on some bill. I know there's been a bill around, some people call it commercial rent control. It hasn't passed since 1980, and I wrote it in 1980 with Ruth Bendinger. So it's just not, I don't think it's gonna happen. So we have a slightly different idea on the rent issues, because to be honest with you, all the other issues are very nice, fines and fees and so on. But when you come down to the real problem in Manhattan, it's rent. You can have the greatest hat store in the world and customers are coming in and the rent goes up 300%. So, I get known as anti-chain, and that's in my DNA, but I understand balance, and have a little bit of both. So the issue we're trying to suggest is that we have, and we're doing this with Robin Carnegie, who is the chair of the Small Business Committee. And the idea is you have a discussion, mandated discussion between owner and commercial tenant. And if it doesn't work out, then you have a year before the person has to move with a slight increase. Now, is that perfect? No. But does at least get the two at the table to have a conversation, so you're not thrown out immediately, and it might pass, which is different than the Small Business, whatever it's called, Survival Act, which I don't think will ever pass, and I'm sure the mayor would veto it, because the real estate industry will have a heart attack. So those are the suggestions. There'll be hearings, I'm sure. You'll all be able to weigh in. I think you got a copy of our report. There are lots of other ideas in it. But we have got to do something in Manhattan, not to mention citywide, for our mom and pops. And I'm open for ideas. We're also gonna work on the zoning issues, as we have here on the Upper West Side. I haven't heard anybody go crazy because they can't put in a new CVS or Dwayne Reed or bank on Amsterdam or Columbus. They cannot, unless it's small. And I also want to suggest one more thing. When you do, God help us, rezoning in any place, not to mention East Harlem, you have to look at the retail. It's not something that the mayor is looking at. We did it on the urban renewal area, but you've got to watch it, because nobody will talk about retail, because it's not affordable housing, it's not in the discussion. And I always say, you can zone retail. You can't say that it's going to be hat store and not Verizon. You can't do that, but you can say it has to be X feet. And you can say, it can be this size. You have 3 doors, 4, you can do all that. You can say the size of the windows. You should see me. This is the color of the grout. I was thinking that. But you can do all that, but you cannot say what can go in it. So it could be 10 party stores, God help us. Or it could be, but you can do the zoning.
Yes, one comment about the mayor's affordable, the whole discussion about the height of the stores and raising the height of the first floor was very concerning to us, because the very high ceiling for the first floor is encouraging for the chains. And so that portion of the proposal was, in my mind, a very an opening for the owners of the building to attract more expensive stores, chairs, and therefore that would be something that I think we need to keep in mind in that rezoning.
Helen, do you want to talk before you go, or you gotta go?
I'm so sorry I'm
Okay.
sharing at 10.
Okay.
Love what you're doing.
Okay.
I'm in the same hearing, but I'll say a couple words quickly. Just mention 2 pieces of legislation I'm working on. We introduced last week a bill to tackle a problem of shadows being cast over New York City parks by ever taller buildings. If you look at models on the impact of the half-dozen super towers around 57th Street, they will seriously impact the shadows in the southern part of Central Park. And you go to the park on a day like today, people are flocking to the sunlight. The benches in the sun are all full, less so in the shade. In the fall and the spring, that's the way parks work. You really impact the park experience if you deny it sunlight. There's no provision currently in our zoning code or any other laws to even account for this, let alone manage it in any way. So our bill would create a task force consisting of the commissioners of all the relevant agencies and members of the public who would look at solutions to this. Other cities have things they call sunlight ordinances, such as San Francisco, which has been very effective. I'm particularly worried about the small parks. Little parks on the Lower East Side or Madison Square Park, where one big building, and there's some unused development rights there, could put the entire park in shadow, which would just dramatically change the experience. Secondly and lastly, yesterday we had a hearing on a bill I'm working on to create our city's first ever Office of Civil Justice Coordinator. If you watch Law and Order, you have a right to counsel in this country. Turns out that only applies in criminal court. In civil court, whether you are facing deportation, an immigration hearing, whether you're facing eviction in housing court, whether you're facing the loss of custody of your kids in family court, if you don't have money to pay, you have no attorney. You're on your own. And in housing court, this is particularly devastating. where only 10% of tenants have attorneys and 90% of landlords do, and that's resulting in a terrible record for tenants, 30,000 evictions last year almost, and that number's growing. So this office will, for the first time, create an internal coordinator to all the service provision for attorneys in these different civil arenas. It will advise the mayor, it will coordinate the budget, it will report annually to the city council on our progress towards meeting the civil justice needs of New York City. It'll have create a 5-year plan to getting to something like full representation in the civil arena. We're very excited about this. The speaker is strongly behind it. She spoke about it in her State of the City speech. And we think it's going to be a game change for civil legal justice in New York City.
We testified for it yesterday, so that was great.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Car Free Central Park, can you tell us where that stands?
We are, we have a bill, as you know, that would ban cars from Central Park. And meanwhile, the city has been working to unveil a new plan on this. And we're negotiating behind the scenes. And frankly, they've asked us to push back the hearing on the bill while they work on this plan. So we think we're going to have an announcement soon. I think it's going to be significant. It might not be everything we want in the bill, but it would be a lot, and that would be one good step forward we could take immediately, and then we'll continue to organize towards our ultimate goal.
That's terrific. I was going to say this in my report, but it's fitting right now, and that is that our Sunshine Task Force that assesses the impact of super towers on 57th Street, particularly shadows on Central Park, is having a town hall hearing on the 28th at the New York Public Library from 6 to 8. And we'd like as many people as possible to come and voice their opinions. We did have one last year where we had a panel and people spoke. Gale was there. But the difference now is that this is a hearing to hear what people have to say and to get their opinions and what they feel about the development that's going on 57th, and particularly what's happening, what's possibly happening in Central Park.
I'm putting it on my calendar. I will be there.
Okay, great. Hi, Dan. Okay.
Councilmember?
I just want to ask Mark, I love the experience of driving through Central Park. Can you just do a couple of hours? I mean, it's such a beautiful experience being a New Yorker. I mean, it could be late at night, it could be just.
You can take a horse carriage.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes. Great stuff. You're right there.
I know.
That's funny.
Uh-oh, that's another one.
No, it's not that safe.
It would have been safer if you talked about the backup of the traffic that's
As a
on
result of-
7th Avenue.
of-
They want
because cars
as a
have to go
result of
around.
that.
Can I
Which
just
is
say
true.
this topic is like
Yeah.
the horse
It
carriage.
is.
Right.
Oh my.
So she's absolutely right.
Well, you guys should do combine.
Because if you're in Central Hall, you have to make that turn and go around, and then you're in Columbus or, yeah, but,
Same conversation took place
Bloomberg's.
over, and I'm just
Oh,
saying,
really?
I had this conversation. It's a big issue.
Yeah,
Good luck, I'm glad I want to do it.
First, I just want to give a huge thank you to the Borough President, Gale Brewer, for the school tech meeting. I've been meeting with all the schools in my district. I've got 19 of them, and smart boards are something I'm learning to be a huge sinkhole. And one of the schools which presented figured out that they could buy a TV for $500 and a digital camera for $200, and that was $700, and they were able to get 10 smart boards for the price of one. And then there's other issues with the smart board contracts, and when you're talking about $500, it's pretty amazing. So just the fact that she's facilitating conversations among the schools is huge, and it is about collaboration. With regard to the 15-foot first floor, I love that. If the borough board would consider adding that to the comments. We were having an argument with city planning. The city council sat down with them yesterday, and they were saying, "Oh, this is going to be good," and that argument did not come up. I did present on behalf of Mark and Helen on the shadows in Central Park and tying that into it. On the topic of technology, the city council, when we got elected, we actually got rules reform. and part of it was an open technology plan. It was recently announced. It's called City Council 2.0, and as soon as the budget is done, so starting in July or August, we will be on a new version of the City Council website. You'll be able to subscribe for alerts on specific topics, specific bills. You'll be able to find out instead of having to go on the website every day like I know you do. The other thing is, how many of you read the City Record every day cover to cover? Oh, come on.
But Kalis, even you don't do that.
It's true. So the good news is at some point this summer we will be getting it through the open data portal, which means we'll actually be able to use that data much better. I was actually it's part of the City Record Online, which we passed. And I didn't think there would be anything left to do in open government after Gale was done in the City Council, but City Record should be fun because it'll actually turn all those notifications that people are supposed to get into something usable. The law is also going to go online, and I've invested a lot of my member item funding into civic software and making sure that we have a constituent services management system for the city, modeled after what the public advocate uses. So I've given the money to a nonprofit that will build it for pretty much every government on the planet. So they're going to be adding some features to that. And then we are so lucky to have Gale Brewer as our borough president, because when it comes to the zoning fight, there's the community on one side, and then there's an infinite amount of money on the other side from developers, but then we have Gale Brewer. So and I think we're evenly matched. And so the fight on the contextual zoning is a top priority, and I've been jealous of the west side, and I would like to bring mom and pop zoning to the east side, and as well as trying to do something about the as of right tall building developments and the 900-foot 90-story building that's coming in at one Sutton, the 58 Sutton. So looking forward to working very closely with all of you as the zoning happens. Thank you so very much.
Is this the time when we just give general reports?
Yes, it is.
Well, first of all, thank you. Sorry I'm a little late. And I understand that there's a vote that I should be casting at some point, so you tell me when it's appropriate for that. We are deep in a number of land use conversations on the east side of Manhattan. I guess I will focus specifically on East Midtown because that is the hot one, and I don't know if you've already addressed this, Madam President, but Gale and I are co-chairing a steering committee to think about how the future East Midtown rezoning, the big one, should look. This is from 39th to 57th Street, 3rd Avenue to around Madison Avenue. You'll recall that Mayor Bloomberg, before he left, had proposed a rezoning of that area and had a lot of certainty for the development community, but not a whole lot of certainty for the public. And as a result, and for a variety of other reasons that were problematic, we stopped that proposal and asked the new mayor, Mayor de Blasio, to resubmit in a more thoughtful way and in a way that allowed us to take our time and do it right. The result was a two-pronged process. The first prong is a rezoning of Vanderbilt Avenue from 42nd to 47th Street. And then the second part is the greater East Midtown rezoning. That's the part which Gale and I are chairing the steering committee to review and to make recommendations on. We have participation from the multi-board task force, Community Board 5, Community Board 6. Got them on my flanks over here, and we are looking to make recommendations within the next few months. Most significantly, right now, that Vanderbilt Avenue rezoning is currently in ULURP, and it is currently on the desk of the City Council. What's nice about the Vanderbilt corridor as a philosophical concept, at least in my view, is it didn't give any as of right anything to anybody. It said to developers, if you want to build bigger and denser, then you must come to the city for an approval, and we will only grant approval if you commit to doing significant infrastructure improvements in or around the Grand Central area. So the current, that's the rezoning proposal in a nutshell. There is a private applicant that is moving along at the same pace as the rezoning proposal. That's 1 Vanderbilt. It's at the corner of 42nd Street, Madison, and Vanderbilt. It's that whole block. And they have proposed to build a significant commercial building right there on that site. And in exchange for that, they propose to do what comes out to in value at around $210 million worth of infrastructure improvements in and around Grand Central. And you know, it's an impressive batch of improvements, things that we will all be able to touch and feel if we approve this project within the next 5 years, because the rezoning would require that those improvements be delivered before a temporary certificate of occupancy for the building is even granted. So anyway, we're in the middle of discussions right now. Gale has weighed in and made some very, very significant changes to the proposal, which were really helpful. We are now in discussions to see if we can continue to move toward more public benefits in this proposal, and also to tweak the broader Vanderbilt rezoning to see if we can add a few more standards for the allocation of development rights. So that's the I mean, that really, I could probably stop there, and I probably will. So that's the biggie. Those are the 2 biggies, right? You know, we've got a mile of Midtown Manhattan that is subject to rezoning and will be rezoned in the next 18 months, and you have the first little 5-block piece, which is currently underway. So Gale's been a great partner. We've had, as always, we're enjoying working together on this. So.
Those who are represented by Councilmember Rodnick should be are very fortunate, and having his leadership on this is great, because he can say that's not what happened last time. He knows. Right.
I'm getting the cue from our general counsel that to remind you that we've kept the vote open for you to adopt the fiscal year 2016 Manhattan Borough Board Priorities Report. If we could now register your vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that you're holding the vote open, and I vote aye.
The vote is now closed. Next we have, before we go to the community board chairs, I'd like to report out in terms of the community board appointment process has now concluded. And I know Elizabeth Caputo said that she wasn't going to let us out the room unless we provided the list of appointees. So we have provided a draft list of you of all new appointments for all 12 community boards. So if you have not gotten that list, let us know so we can get it to you. It is embargoed, however, until...
We don't have it. Do you have it?
Yeah.
All right, just raise your hand and we'll get you all.
It's embargoed until when?
It's embargoed until Monday.
Monday?
Yeah, until Monday.
Wow.
This is just for you
It's hard
because
to keep
you've been
our
wanting
password.
for a while. Basically, because it's going to be put on our website. Hopefully, it will be up on our website tomorrow. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lucille.
Yes.
It'll be up on our website tomorrow. Letters have gone out, so we just want to give the members the opportunity to receive the letters and then direct people to our website.
So I have a question about that. So at that point, are you asking people to report for committees and to start to, because what we want them is to usually visit the committees during the months and then assign them for the next month. So are we asking them now, from now to the end of the month, to attend committees?
Jim?
Jim, I really need help here. Did you hear the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what's the answer?
You can, they're going to start May 1st. The new appointees they will be
They'll
officially.
finish this year.
No,
Is that correct? This-
so if a member is not reappointed, they will be finishing out the month before
But
the
I'm
new
talking about
member
the
is
new
appointed.
people.
They start May 1st.
They begin May 1st,
So
but
May-
you can assign them to committees as you.
But we can ask them to come and visit the committees now. Because what we do usually is
Yes, absolutely.
visit the committee and then choose.
I wanted.
Because what you will receive today is
Okay.
for all the new members,
Yeah.
you're going to receive, yourself and the district manager will receive all their contact information,
Okay.
their emails, their phone, their addresses, and then, but what I'm saying is don't contact them until Monday, to give them an opportunity.
And their
to-
term will be May 1st to April 1st of next year, or May 1st?
Their term will be May 1st to April 3rd, to April 1st,
So
to
these
March
are
31st.
March 31st.
March 31st.
March, yeah.
Okay.
So this is 11 months.
Okay.
It's essentially, yes, it's gonna essentially.
Or a year and 11 months.
A year and 11.
A year and
Yes.
11 months.
Well, yeah. Got it.
Yes, you will get
Oh, you are
copies of their
giving- right.
applications, then you will get all their contact information.
I
and
want
then you will
to,
get
I want to thank the
Right.
Deputy Borough President, I want to thank Lucille
Yes.
Songhai and Jesus Perez. This has been a very long process, and I want to say also Gale Brewer made some very tough calls.
Yes. Thank you.
Very tough call.
Thank you.
So there will be some very upset people, but everybody has been told if they are not reappointed, just so you know. I don't know which boards are here or not, and but I know whom I call. And so you just, so we're gonna have to get through that, and then there are people who are appointed that people won't like at all levels. There's gonna be a lot of fuss. But I think we've done the right thing, and things that have not been done in the past, we have done. I also wanna say that, there's a lot of excitement. There are a lot of people whom we couldn't put on, who are excellent, because there's no room. And so that will be, we'll put them on sort of a waiting list, because unfortunately people do move on or move or whatever. And so we will try to appoint if we can.
Can you give us that waiting list in
I
case
cannot,
they are?
no, we're not doing that.
Not the waiting list, but you have another list called the bench list, which is individuals we're recommending for public membership.
Oh, that's what I was
That's
just
under
gonna
the
say,
first
could we
review
put them
where
on as
you-
public members? Good.
Got it.
What about officers? Because, our elections don't occur until June, so, I got a call Saturday from someone who's an officer. So do they get to serve out, or do they?
No, if they're not reappointed, their term ends upon the appointment of their replacement. So if their replacement's appointment is effective May 1st, they are no longer a member on May 1st.
Okay.
So it's really important that members who are no longer members can't participate in votes on or after May 1st, and new appointees should be voting as of May 1st.
But they count for a quorum now on their current committee, so a lot of people thought that April
Yes,
1st.
April 1st is the charter date.
Right.
But it says that until the appointment of a new member is made, the old member can hold over for up to 60 days.
But even though we know that's May 1st, nobody else does, so they still have to come to committee meetings. In
Yes,
April, they
because
count for a
there
quorum,
has not
even if
been
they're
an
not coming
appointment
back.
of a replacement
Okay.
made yet.
Okay.
So everyone who's currently there should just
just keep-
behave
Okay.
as they would ordinarily.
Okay.
Until the new people are in place on May 1st.
Okay.
Just so you know, your boards will be infused with altogether in the borough, 92 new fresh faces, 92 new members. So it's almost like 28% new appointees.
I'd like to say for Community Board 9 already, I'm real excited as the chair, because we're already seeing the results of the last appointment, where new people have stepped up and are in leadership and are getting ready to move. 2 years ago they came on now, and some of them 1 year ago, and now they're moving into major leadership roles, and that's a testament, because it makes the boards come alive, and makes the board re-energized, and so it's exciting to see that. We haven't been on the board for so many years, and see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very happy to hear that comment and others as well, particularly the process from last year. We'll get you all these numbers soon enough, but I think it was 100% retention rate from all the new appointments that we appointed last year. So 100% retention rate. So we're gonna have all these metrics and data points for you guys in the coming months. Also, bylaws. That's just a sexy topic everybody likes to talk about. Bylaws. We want to tackle the uniformity and just the bylaws across the whole borough. We want to do it through we want to do it to convening like a commission on this, to really go through all the bylaws. What's the definition of quorum? What's quorum for the full, for the committees? You can, what constitutes the executive board? Who are members of it? The whole kit and caboodle in terms of A to Z of bylaws. So we want to be able to just give bylaws a new facelift and best practices, and look at what's working for boards and what might not, so that we can all get a sense of, maybe 90% of it overlaps across the borough, and then 10% is unique to each community board. But whatever that number is, we want to be able to hash it out together at a borough level.
Are you looking for any volunteers?
We love volunteers. We're gonna send an invite for that, so you can decide. We would like the chairs to participate, but also who within your board would you like to appoint to this committee?
We now have a copy of everybody's bylaws, so we can circulate that.
So would would the result of the bylaw be that all 12 boards would have to comply, or just that
That's something that,
recommended?
that's something that we'll hash out, we'll bring it to the borough board.
Up to you.
There are certain things that I know are unique to my board, for example, so I'm just curious.
No, it's up to you.
And as long as, you're right, reading there's some things very unique to some of your bylaws. However, they fly contrary to the city charter. So we want to make sure that when applicable, the city charter always prevails. So like I said, I don't think more than, probably I would dare say almost 90% or 95% should be uniformity across all community boards. And that 5% that's unique is fine, as long as it's not contrary to the city charter. Sure. Gigi?
So, we're just about ready to adopt a new set of bylaws. I mean, I guess I should speak to you about your timeline and whether or not we should hold off, or, because we've been working on this for 2.5 years.
I wouldn't know.
Oh, okay.
Move forward, and then that could be, we probably have a lot of lessons that we can share with the group.
Okay.
And that's the other thing, like just something as simple as when some bylaws, like when we downloaded them, some show you the history of adoption, and some don't include that. So you don't know, is this bylaw the latest one, not the latest one? So just something as simple as that, that not everyone has adopted that standard. We can learn from that. We can all make, our bylaws better and more transparent.
It's a best practice.
Yeah, it's a best practice.
Are they all,
History of
just
adoption.
out of curiosity, I mean, ours are available on our website. I don't know if everyone else shares them publicly.
We do. Oh,
Yes, we were able to call all bylaws from everybody.
Okay, great.
All right, so now we're going to, community board, chair reports. We'll start off with, community board 12, and we'll go way down to board 12.
Okay, thank you. Actually, Community Board 12 will be wrapping up our bylaws tonight on committee meetings. So also, in June, we have an infrastructure forum that we'll be working on. And when most people think of infrastructure, they think of the roads and bridges, but in Washington Heights Inwood, as most of you know, we have one of the most antiquated subsurface infrastructures in the city. So we'll be bringing in the utility, and we will have a forum on that. We're also going to have a forum on elder abuse in June that we're putting together. We also finished a resolution on a proposed restoration project facility at Sherman Creek Station. So we've completed that resolution. We tossed that around because we had to go back to parks because we didn't really have, as you know, part of that's a brownfield, so we needed a lot of information in terms of whether they had taken up the old tanks and removed the soil. So we got a complete, whether they had closed the spill number, and so all that was taken care of, and we approved that resolution, and that's so that facility will start to be built on the Sherman Creek area.
Community Board 11?
Would you have to go, Christine, or you?
Oh, yeah, could you,
All right.
I'm so sorry about that, yes. So first of all, yes, thank you for Gale for making all these tough calls. This is something which was really necessary, and you have to have the guts to do it, and that's wonderful that you did it. Thank you so much on assignment. First, very good news, the DOT came to yesterday and presented a number of safety enhancement for our neighborhood. This is the result of a study which has been going on for 10 years, so that's not just the result of Vision Zero, but they are going to do up to 10 split phase on our avenues. They are going to redirect some buses out of 9th Avenue, so it will be less, and they will change the direction of 11th Avenue. So direction 11th Avenue below 57th Street is 2 ways, and they will change it to 1 way, so that a portion of was less used and unnecessary. So these are major enhancements that we have been fighting for about 10 years. And we're not talking about studying now, we're talking about doing. So it's happening right now, and we're very, very excited to do that. On the other hand, Port Authority disclosed last month their master plan for doing a new bus terminal. And it's a pretty horrendous thing where they're going to take over about 3.5 blocks of Midtown prime real estate to put a massive garage and double the capacity. And you know, the Port Authority doesn't have to do ULURPs. So all the impacts on the streets and on the subway line, which will be massive, are not going to be studied, and they will be pushed to the city to correct. So we are talking to the Port Authority, but eventually we'll come and ask you, and you know, do a resolution and ask for a resolution to say, look, it has to be studied because not only it's happening here, but it's happening at Gateway, which is the project to bring more trains at Penn Station. And so between those two things, 8th Avenue and all these lines, the E lines, et cetera, is going to be totally overwhelmed. And that's a major infrastructure we need to think about. Number 3, we are working on a new project for affordable housing. It's the former location of Hunter College, which has vacated the location on 41st Street and between 10 and 9. And next to that, there is a youth homeless shelter, Covenant House, which is the biggest in the city. And they want to redesign that place and make it more capacity. So we're going to combine those two projects and make it a mix of a new community facility and then affordable housing, and we hope it's going to yield about 260 or more affordable apartments and some youth, transition housing. So which is really, so that's very, very exciting. And we are very early in the process, but we are working with EDC on that. And finally, going back to the commitments, and we have had a lot of zonings where developers have made commitments, and then we find ourselves 2, 3, 4 years down the path, and the commitments are not respected. And we come across these issues by happenstance. And recently, yesterday, one was about mom and pop. When Fulton Houses lost a lot of little stores, developer built another building and then said, we will have, affordable, washer, dryers, etc. And now they come to ask for a liquor license to put a restaurant, a high-end restaurant there. And we don't know where to go with that, because there's no place to say, wait a minute, this was a commitment, we do go to city planning. So I think we need your help on maybe having a follow-up on commitments made to different zoning, to different community board, and where we have a place to, do a schedule, a to-do list, whatever you do, and all look at that and say, are we going to get what we were promised? And so I just want to put it on the table. I think it's a vacuum right now, and we certainly need help, because again, at the community board level, it's in the head of all the, but we can't really interact at the level where we should be, which is when they are designing their space and redoing their space. So that would be a huge help if you could help us on that. And that's consistent with the mom and pop strategy of retaining, the commitments. Thank you so much for all your work and changing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 11, Community Board 10.
About several things. We have been working with the Department of Transportation some time on the SBS bus, and one of the concerns we had, there was never a comprehensive study done. It was like certain things were put upon us, and we were supposed to act on those things. So and also they want to do the dedicated bus line and do that, the red line, take a lane away, remove one lane. So our DOT came to the Transportation Committee this week and for an informational session to talk about the implementation of SBS on Central Harlem and also West Side. And for the first time, we really had a good conversation with them, and we made it very clear to them that none of the questions that we have been asking for the last year and a half has ever been answered by DOT. We have meetings, they basically take all the information, and they come back the next time, 6 months later, and no answers. And plus, there were a lot of questions about disabilities. Individuals with disabilities found it very hard to maneuver the kiosks. Also, they had to pay some cases, individuals are paying extra fare because they had to get on 3 buses now to get to the SBS M60 bus. So there were a lot of issues from the disability community, again, never answered. So finally, they promised for the first time that they will answer all of our questions so we can feel good about this, because we want this to happen, but we also have to look at what our community is feeling about this and get certain questions answered. So I hope we're on a better road now. I'm talking to Margaret and sending her something, and we've asked the community also to input on this. But they have just kind of ignored the community in every step. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. So I'm hoping this will happen so that we can move forward with the SBS buses.
What's the status now? I should know this.
This week, just last Tuesday, they came for an informational session.
Right, got it.
Their feeling was that they wanted to start this in August, start implementing this in August. But now we're gonna get this information to them, hopefully they can answer the questions. The questions are not hard, and we want them to come back, say, 6 months, so we look at this, if it's moving, we wanna now talk about what's working, what may not be working, because we don't have enforcement. I think they keep modeling this after 34th Street. Well, 34th Street doesn't have any parked cars, 34th Street have enforcement, we just don't have that in the community. So we
It doesn't
need-
exist now.
Exactly.
So the M60 is doing its regular route now?
No, M60 is doing SBS
That's what I
now,
thought, yeah.
yes, and they have I'm sorry, only between Lennox Avenue
that's what I
and
thought.
First.
Right.
So now they wanna go
All the way.
through Central Harlem and through, yes, so that's where we are
And
now.
they're not gonna do that until they have questions answered.
Answer the questions, yes.
And the big issue is this whole parking and enforcement. We just discussed it at our executive board, and one of the major concerns is that if a car is driving, it's on the left side of the bus, it's got to turn in right into the bus lane if it's going west to get to parking. And that seems
Right, the
very,
parking, yeah, parking
very
is
dangerous.
inside the
Yeah.
red bus lane, so cars will have to dart in if they see a space.
Right.
Across the red line, I mean, there are all these questions about how this is going to work on this particular street. Plus, for businesses, there are not, loading zones on the other street, like on 34th Street, you may find 34th going to 33rd, 36th. That doesn't happen. So loading and unloading takes place on 125th Street. So where will they load? They will be in the bus lane, So, because there'll be a car parked, then there's the bus lane, then there's that other single lane. So there's a lot of concern about all the traffic going through the community, coming from the West Side Highway, coming from the East Side Highway, coming from the Major Deacon. Everyone goes to 125th Street, and like I mentioned at the meeting, we're kind of landlocked, and then we have housing projects. So if you need to make a left turn, and that's the other thing, the new proposal is removing all the left-hand turns, like from St. Nicholas. If you're in Central Harlem, you can make a left-hand turn on St. Nicholas. And the next left-hand turn is on Madison. That's a matter of 4 blocks. And you're basically taking all of Central Harlem, saying no left turns. So this is new in their proposal. This has just come up in the last month or two. So again, we talked about a real comprehensive report, because there's ways of changing some of the streets, because right now, we just can't go down the streets, but for some reason, DOT just didn't want to do a comprehensive study where we sit down and say, well, maybe we need to change a couple of streets to help with the flow of the traffic going back to the east side, especially the Major Deacon, because everyone's going to the Major Deacon. And you can get to the Major Deacon on 124th Street, but you have 1 block near Mount Morris that goes west. If they just eliminated that, you'll have a complete 124th Street straight down. Well, that would help with the traffic.
How would 124th Street feel about that?
Well, the only piece we're talking about is Mount Morris Park. That 1 block, and there's a bus that comes around there.
Okay.
And that block is basically, I think, a library, a housing. So it's not that many.
Residential.
Yeah. So that's one. So we want them to look at this, but, so anyway, we want to work with them, and, so I thought it was a very good meeting. The other thing is Bradhurst Plaza Park. 154th Street, something like that, I believe that's where Brad Harris is. HUDC and HCCI, which is the Housing Development, and then of course HUDC, the city, state agency, they want to put a plaza there, and we're having the worst time because the residents don't want the plaza. They plan to take part of the street away, I mean, for safety reasons, and do a beautiful plaza like downtown, but the residents are so upset about this. And so we're having this back and forth. The residents don't want it, HCCI and HUDC want to move ahead. So that's just something we're dealing with right now. And it may be come to this liquor store has just basically rented a space right there. That may kill the whole thing. Right on the plaza. I mean, where they want to do the plaza.
Where do they want to do?
Bradhurst Avenue, there's that little arch in the street. It's a very cute area. They want to morph that into a plaza, take away the street.
Is that 157?
Yes, just about, yeah, that's close where you are. Yeah, so that's one thing we're dealing with a community who's saying no, 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 and then of course everyone wants to move forward. And they've gotten a lot of letters and everything, so that's what we're working with. The last thing, Whole Foods, we're working with Whole Foods for job wages and all of that in terms of their development. Buffalo Wings is coming to our community. I understand there are 16 locations in New York, and there are approximately 300 jobs, so that's gonna be really great for the community and others outside the community too.
And they're being helpful in both cases,
Yes,
with community jobs?
Yes, and they have great benefits. Some restaurant being that large, they have benefits. That's really a big plus. So we are working with them. They're going to be working with workforce development also in terms of jobs. So those are the three major things.
And next, and I apologize to our gracious host, and she's probably texting that she's running a little late for that
No,
meeting she
I
told me
was-
about earlier today.
It's
So
fine,
you can do your report next, unless you-
I was texting because I don't have to be in the office till 11.
Okay, good.
I
I
can
know
go,
you told me about
I'm not
the
next
meeting.
time, I.
No, you're not, but I know you told me.
I'm fine.
You can go if you have to.
I'm fine.
You're fine, okay. Maria, Tony,
Okay, and I'll be brief. We just had the topping off ceremony, for yesterday for the cathedral, project. It was really heartwarming. It's the first time I've been on a construction site in our area and saw such diversity. I actually got a phone call from someone in the area who said a similar thing, that they were just shocked. So with all the concern we had and all the work that we did with the developer, it's really paid off. We also understand that at this point, we have $14 million that is gone. It's only 10% of the total project, but it's more than we've usually gotten as a community, and it's going back to minority women and local businesses. We are in the process of looking at getting new engine turbines. We're working with the DP to upgrade and update the wastewater treatment center, and that's on the Riverbank State Park, the wastewater treatment center, and we're looking at they're beginning to use the waste and convert it into gas and then into energy. So we're excited about that because, you know, it's always the issue with the pollution of our river if we don't do a better job there. Also, our Housing and Land Use Committee is working and creating a forum to protect the affordable housing stock in our community. We're also working very closely with the WHDC. We have a housing fund that we got from Community Benefits Agreement. So we're working to start to look at how we can begin to find a way to get some subsidies and to move forward some of the other programs that are still in process and haven't completed it. We're looking for space for our Teachers College Community School, and we are right now trying to just form a committee to look at how we can begin to access and utilize some of the seized funds that the district attorney's office has. They're going to be doing some work, some safety work in NYCHA buildings throughout the city. And so we're looking at how we might be able to get some of those funds as community board to increase safety in our district.
Thank you. Community Wade?
So first of all, tonight is the first meeting of our new technology committee at CB8. Our committee has not been very tech forward, and so I think this is a really great development for us. Just in terms of not having so much feedback in the microphones at the meetings and not having any amplification for a lot of the committee meetings. And one thing that we talked about was looking for various things, like just that process of having handwritten sign-ups for speaking at public session and then trying to decipher handwriting, as opposed to maybe having a tablet where people sign in and then the chair might be able to reorder things on the tablet, that you have a list posted of who's next, things like that. I've been hoping that somebody will work on community board, specific to community board project management software to track what resolutions have you passed, did the city respond, did they say yes, did they say no, did you never hear back, is it falling into a black hole? Just things that will really help us to better and more efficiently utilize our time as volunteers. We also just formed an ad hoc task force for the demapping of East 91st Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, which has been closed to traffic for about 40 years as part of the Rupert Brewery site. Particularly since it's about 2 blocks away from the New Marine Transfer Station, just making sure that that's off the map, and it's been supported by our elected officials. So right now what we need is some response from some of the city agencies like transportation and sanitation. There were a lot of members of the public who turned out at the last 2 full board meetings to express concern about a new Apple store at 74th and Madison. It doesn't seem like there are any variances going on. I believe it's a landmark building, but the interior changes were approved, and I don't know of any exterior changes, but there were definitely very, very strongly organized and persistent group that's looking to oppose it. So this has been referred to our Public Safety Committee because it doesn't have any zoning issues at this point, and it doesn't have, issues that would involve our Street Life Committee, which,
I have one question, having dealt with the one here. Is it a building that will be in the normal Apple design? Or not clear?
It's not entirely clear, and they haven't publicly announced it. It's been known though for about a year, I think, is when it.
Will that have big windows and lots of light, or is it not that kind of building?
It's the old. I think the old. It's the old mortgage. That was a U.S. Trust mortgage or something. That's Madison. It's a big building.
Right.
I don't think it has the giant.
Okay, it
has a 95-foot street front.
The only issue is the lights. They put the lights on 24/7, and then neighbors is the problem. But if you don't have that kind of situation, it's like
one other major issue of concern: the East 81st Street pedestrian bridge, which gets you across from John Finley Walk, which is the upper Esplanade, to what currently is a staircase down to the lower Esplanade, is scheduled for a vote by PDC, the Public Design Commission, on Monday. There have been a lot of community concerns that were never addressed. This project was supposed to go forward a few years ago, but they, DDC just stopped coming back because they didn't have any funding, and then they never reappeared on the radar until they'd already issued and awarded a contract, despite requests to come back. And so PDC has until now held off on approval. We've had a number of working group meetings with the community board, elected officials, members of the immediate surrounding area, the 79th Neighborhood Association, along with DDC Parks and DOT. So in some ways, it's actually been a really good process that they've been coming to the table and working with us. And in other ways, it seems like there's been a lot of changing stories, misrepresentations. The first time we ever received anything in the way of an environmental review was a letter that arrived at the community board office yesterday with a 2013, supposedly 2013 environmental review, but with the city writing a letter dated April 8th saying that they've made Parks the lead agency on this project. And this has been really a concern for us, and we've been working very hard on trying to address some of the biggest concerns here. And the sale has closed on the CUNY MSK project on East 74th Street. which is going to house the new Hunter Nursing School and the Memorial Sloan Kettering Outpatient Surgery Center. But this project provides funding to go forward with the next phase of Andrew Haswell Green Park, which is on the Esplanade from 60th to 62nd Street roughly. And it also has $500,000 to be provided for a comprehensive traffic study of the entire length of York Avenue, which we've been asking for quite some time. And then the last item, the current contract for the tennis bubble concession at the Queensboro Oval is coming to an end in the next couple of years. And this has been a real issue for the community because first they put the tennis bubble there and then suddenly it expanded longer and longer. That was a site that was used for softball games and softball leagues. And then without community input, the Parks Department extended the use of the property by the tennis bubble to the point that the softball league starts before they even come down. In addition, the site's not been getting restored, so it hasn't been really properly usable. So the board passed a resolution limiting any use of the site, requesting to limit any use of the site in a future concession to no more than 6 months, including the restoration, with liquidated damages for any encroachment upon our 6 months of public usability.
Just one thing to add, Scott is being very generous. The city agencies are not working with us. They're just showing up and saying we're building it, period, and we're not going to listen to any community feedback because we're going to build it, period. So, yes.
Sure, so just a few things. On the technology front, I think it's great that you're starting a committee. We started one last year with a couple of our newer members. One of the big things that we started doing that I wanted to make a mention of today is that we stream our monthly full board meetings. While that sounds, it's worked out really well sort of in theory because even some of our members who didn't like the idea of doing it, some of them are taking a leave of absence now and actually were able to tune in and watch our meeting last month. So there are parts of it that have worked out really well. The difficulties that we have are just, if in the one, because we go all over the neighborhood for our meetings, some places don't have adequate Wi-Fi or the acoustics don't work, and working out those kinks is a bit of a challenge. So I would love to talk to you more about how you address those issues within your committee. On a policy front, just 3 or 4 things. I mentioned last month that we had a presentation and had ongoing discussions about the collegiate school and the relocation of the affordable units, which were supposed to be on site in the southern part of the district that may get moved very far away from that part. We were able to meet with HPD this month. Ahmed from your office was there with us at that meeting, and we had a very constructive discussion on what the community board is actually going to do is convene a meeting in May where we can take feedback from the community about alternative sites, including some that even HPD doesn't know about. So because I guess they don't have the bandwidth to do that work, we're going to try to do it for them and actually have the community input that's required to see if possibly there's any way that we can find a place for this money in this these units so that they're closer to the southern part of the district, which is what we want. The Borough President mentioned the zoning issues. That was a great example. Our past chair, Mel Wymore, who many of you all know, very quickly. We were very disappointed that this information about the new zoning change from the city happened so quickly, but we were able to quickly convene sort of a task force and a meeting, a public meeting, the Friday before the hearing, and were able to give some good testimony to that, which I thought kudos to Mel and his team for doing that. We had a successful B2B on March 31st, and again, the Borough President's office was great in helping us find the Folk Art Museum and work with them on that. We had over 65 people there, and the theme was really focused on sort of using digital and social media for reaching out to people. We had even a person who came who represents, we had never met before, who owns sort of an open space area near the Macaulay School. It's called The Yard. And they offered up space for an upcoming community board meeting as a result of the B2B, which was great. So there were some people from outside of the neighborhood as well who were there. So the next one, I believe there will be one before the end of the summer, so probably sometime in mid-June will be the next one. Obviously, transportation issues continue to be a big issue in our neighborhood. Just, I guess over the past month, there was a student at an area that we've actually been really looking at, one of the intersections, 77th and Columbus, who was hit by a car. We have, sort of accelerated our work with DOT to try to get some of the changes we've been trying to move forward advanced, both there and potentially with the Amsterdam study that we have requested for over a year now. So I think there will be a lot percolating in the months ahead on those two issues in particular. One issue for all community boards that I wanted to just briefly ask about is the new trash cans and recycling bins, how they have been received in your neighborhoods. We have had very sort of negative feedback given that they're, the collection of the people, aren't using them, they're not using them in the right way, that when the sanitation teams come to actually pick up the trash, they're dumping anything that's not recyclable onto the streets, creating an even worse problem. So I know our district manager has really been, and so there may be a resolution coming through our transportation committee to actually try to remove those and try to find a better outlet. So
Did you say sanitation's dumping on the streets?
Yeah, they're basically like sorting them, and anything that's not recyclable, they leave on the street. And they only do it once a week. They only come once a week to, so especially near Central Park, when tourists are there on the weekends or whatever, they're overflowing and they're not, they're only looked at once a week.
Was he talking about the green and blue?
The green, blue, yeah.
We don't have them yet, so.
Okay, yeah, and I thought it might be something very specific. I was surprised by this, but it was feedback I got, so I wanted to just check and make sure I wasn't, because I think on the other hand, we're happy that they're there. We have another committee that is focused on parks and environment, and they're very happy that those trash cans and recycling bins are there. So that's just something that has come up. And I guess just a final thing, Councilmember Kalis isn't here, but interestingly enough, our board, and I was not expecting this, did narrowly vote to support his legislation on term limits. And I don't know what other, this isn't tonight, today is not the day to discuss that as a group, but I think there was a feeling that 12 years is a long time, and it's 12 years with a 1-year hiatus, and then people can come back to the board. And I was surprised by it, but it very narrowly passed.
Number 6?
So,
Can I just say one thing? I want to say about the crossing guards, because that's a big issue. We don't have enough in Manhattan. We have the most fatalities in Manhattan. School crossing guards are a livelihood that a lot of people don't want to take advantage of because the pay is so low. So it's actually a situation where we have lots of schools that have no crossing guards.
And they have no insurance, right? So they go on and off.
And there's a whole issue with their summer, lack of employment, so no insurance, etc. So we have called for a different way in which school guards are hired and getting more pay and so on, without getting into the details. But there had been a request for a school crossing guard at that location, and none appeared. And I can go on and on about other locations. So school crossing guards might be something you want to deal with in terms of a resolution, or something we can send you a copy of our report on it and press release, because really they do make a big difference. And if you're talking about Vision Zero, the school crossing guards should be talked in addition and part of that discussion. So we'll send it around.
Yeah, I think we actually were working with your office. We had a lot of trouble finding crossing guards for some of our intersections that really needed them. So
There just aren't any on the
important
list.
issue, yeah. So just real quickly, Board 6 was not so much in favor of the term limits, and I think some of the things that we've actually been hearing about today is exactly why. Many of these problems that we're experiencing, like Catherine mentioned earlier, are things that we're almost having to do enforcement on. So there are things that were negotiated many years ago in some cases, and they're only really kept through institutional memory. And I think that chiefly is the reason that we weren't in favor of the 10 or 12-year limits. I want to speak along those lines. I wanted to actually thank the Borough President's Office. We had this last before we had a 50-year serving member, and we had a good farewell for her. And although you weren't able to make it, Jesus did a wonderful time in presenting the proclamation to her, and she was extremely touched. And she sent a wonderful thank you note, which I'm going to forward over to your office. But yeah, so she was a chair in the 70s, I think. So very long-standing member. But also the idea of having an even expanded urban planning resource, I think, is really crucial to Ward 6. I mean, with East Midtown, with the as of right 900-foot skyscraper that Councilmember mentioned earlier, where several lots were bought up, transfer of air rights occurred, and now it's ridiculously out of context with the neighborhood. And there is no real community board input in this matter. So yeah, this is something that I think we really want to look at, and I think we've done 18% of the 197A and 197C plans that have been adopted by the council, and we're looking to expand that. Do more planning studies, maybe an additional 197A plan for areas west of our 2nd Avenue border for the last one. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we are having a senior forum May 5th, and many of you know personally very well, I think, Councilmember Corey Johnson, former board chair. He will be the keynote speaker, and we're going to be doing this forum on senior mental and physical health. So of course everyone's invited. It's actually the Stein Senior Center, which is at 204 East 23rd Street, and that's 6 p.m. on May 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 5?
I'm going to limit my report to something to do with landmarks. As all of you probably know, this is the 50th anniversary, and Sunday, I believe, is the actual anniversary of the date that the Landmarks Law was signed. So during this month, Community Board 5's Landmarks Committee, I'm so proud of them, they decided to honor the lost landmarks of CB5. So each member of the committee prepared a report on a lost building in CB5. And the reports were combined into a document like this. And if I could just take a moment, the first part of the first part, I have a copy for you. Well, I'm sorry it's not in color, but it got to be very expensive. So the first part, which I think is really important, is an introduction on the Landmarks Law itself, how it came to be, the Brokaw House being probably one of the main reasons. Then there is part of the first building to ever be landmarked was the Wyckoff House in Flatbush, Brooklyn. The Merchants House Museum was the first landmark in Manhattan. Pardon? The Suffolk Court Historic. The first historic district was the Sniffen Court Historic District, which is between 3rd Avenue and Lexington on 36th Street. Central Park was the first scenic landmark. New York Public Library was the first interior. And our tallest landmark is in CB5, the Empire State Building. And the youngest one to be designated was Lever House, which is also in CB5. It was designated the moment it turned 30. And the rest of the report deals with Pennsylvania Station. These are the people who researched. Pennsylvania Station, Studebaker Building, Ziegfeld Theater, the Drake Hotel, the Hippodrome, Tammany Hall, the Biltmore Hotel, the Union Dime Savings Bank, Astor Hotel, Helen Hayes Theater, the Old Metropolitan Opera House, and the Savoy Plaza Hotel. And it's researched with pictures, history, architecture. I am so proud of this committee. Wow. I can't tell you.
As a fundraiser.
I know. What I spoke to Gale about earlier was a possibility of maybe getting this produced and having it as part of the 50th anniversary. CB5 has a huge number of present landmarks, but a large number of what we call lost treasures. So I have a copy for you.
Is it up on your website as well?
Yes, it's on the website as of this morning. I wouldn't let them put it up until I made the presentation. That goes to the Landmarks Committee. They were wonderful on it. And the other issue that the Landmarks Committee dealt with this month was they weighed in on a proposed extension of the existing Madison Square North Historic District, which exists, but they're looking to increase the boundaries. The board voted overwhelmingly in support, but with the caveat that go to LPC for them to determine the boundaries, because there were we had a huge public session, developers and business owners on one side, and it was probably one of the most interesting. I've been on the board a long time, thanks to no term limits, and it was probably one of the most interesting public sessions we have ever had. People came to speak in favor of this, not because it was their opinion, but they gave information on Tin Pan Alley and the areas within the historic district, and what the significance was and why it was important that this be supported. And everyone kind of really, in the public session, sat there like, really listening. It was great. So that went to LPC for them to determine what the boundaries are. And then the last I just want to mention again is our Central Park Shadows, which is also kind of a knockoff of the Landmarks Committee having to do with the super towers on 57th Street. Everyone is invited, and especially those boards that are that butt up against the southern part of Central Park in particular, because of the shadows that are going to be cast there. So it'll be April 28th at the New York Public Library. And as I said earlier, it's a hearing to hear what people have to say, because we did do this last year with a panel on what the experts had to say. So please come.
Yes, thank you. So, many of you know we've been dealing with the East Village explosion and fire, and I want to thank you. A lot of the board chairs emailed me and reached out and asked how you could help, and there's been a great outpouring of support from the community. The city agencies, all agencies really came together and did a very well-coordinated job. I particularly wanted to thank Councilmember Mendez's office. DOB was great, sending us kind of daily updates through midnight, sometimes after. OEM and the CB3 office staff set up an emergency resource center in the CB3 office, and that actually worked out so well that they're actually going to start looking at and considering using CB3 offices moving forward, and seeing if that could be kind of a standard partnership for disasters. God forbid they happen, but to use the CB3 offices of other community boards. Also, CB3 is working on a fundraiser, and I think the information went out that the Mayor's Fund had started, collecting money for the displaced families, and something that the board in the Lower East Side bid worked on was also setting up a separate fund to help the businesses that have been affected. So you can donate to eastvillagerelief.nyc, and that is a separate account also connected through the Mayor's Fund, but specifically to help out the displaced businesses as well. Separately, on the CB3, CB6 joint waterfront issue, we're very excited to hear that NYCHA has gotten money to really move forward on their resiliency efforts with backup generators, with greening roofs and all of those things, as we're finally seeing a lot of money for the first time coming into NYCHA from a variety of agencies and government levels. And New York Rising, which is the state money, the governor's money, is also starting to trickle down, and I think they call them RFAs or RFQs.
No, it wasn't RF.
NOFA. Anyway, there's all these acronyms. But money is finally starting to come down, and we feel like we've been talking and dealing with resiliency for such a long time. And then finally, I just wanted to raise, we have an Xtel development on the waterfront on Cherry Street, which some of you may know. It's the former Pathmark site right in the Two Bridges area. And, it's all as of right, so the community board has very little say. I mean, we've been working with them in terms of doing quarterly construction updates, and I think something that's I want to bring up is that this is a situation where there's a market rate building, and then there's a smaller, completely sort of affordable building. So instead of a poor door, there's a poor building. But I think what has recently surfaced is that they are going for 4 sets of subsidies, which will not only help them and subsidize them to build the affordable units, but will actually in turn, sort of the way it was explained to me, is not that there's some loopholes about double dipping and triple dipping, but now apparently they've somehow figured out a way to quadruple dip, so some of those subsidies will actually in turn help them build the market rate building, which is, I think last time we checked it was 60 floors. So, you know, other than public shaming, I guess there's very little role for the community board to be involved, but I would love to kind of work with your office and think about like what are some other venues that we could really use.
And also, let's look at this more carefully, because I didn't, there was not knowledge that I had.
Yes, this is a recent development, and apparently the mayor has until the end of the month to approve all of the subsidies.
Do you know which programs?
That's what we'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll get info to everybody.
Right, and I know there's another Extel development site right
They're
between
all over the
you.
place.
Yeah, they're just all over the place.
They're like dog poop in New York City. It's
So,
disgusting.
yeah.
Sorry.
That's my.
Community board too?
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the same thing I talked about last month, which is our board's focus on the quality and affordable housing plan. I think it is encouraging that we did catch their attention. There are two things that I think concern us a lot, one of which is that in this kind of ULURP, in this kind of plan, the problem is that when you try to make suggestions for the scope, the response is always, since you're actually proposing something less than what they're proposing, they say, well, that's in scope. You don't have to change the scope for that. The problem with that is that it really, the study process is focused on the plan, and it's very hard afterwards to adjust the plan in the powerful and in the right way, so that they put a train in motion, and anything you say about it, say, well, that's fine, we'll talk about it when the time comes. But and then the other problem is that since it's citywide, there has been a lot of concern in some community boards, and the two sessions that we attended, the two sessions that they held a few weeks ago, citywide sessions, inviting community board leadership to come and hear about it and ask questions about it. And there was a lot of intensity of concern about it among a very small number of boards. So when that gets averaged out through the city, the opposition to it might not be enough to really make a lot of changes. And as well, the problem is the way environmental impact studies happen, since it's a citywide plan, there'll be citywide thresholds. Very often the harm that is done is localized, and the threshold for the city doesn't get met, and there's no need for mitigation required. In response to that situation, we tried to put forward some scope changes. And I'll just talk about one. So in other words, our first comment was kind of broadly talking about the problems we saw, and since they kind of refused to listen to our proposed scope changes and just said, well, that's in scope already, we tried to put forward some things that would geared to making them more, take it more seriously. One of them is with respect to affordable housing, because in some areas, as Borough President pointed out in her response to it, in some areas where there's mandatory affordable housing, all these things will create opportunities for more affordable housing. In places where there is none, and particularly in high-value locations, it could do the opposite, because it could encourage the demolition, the tear down of existing older buildings with replacement with newer buildings that will all be affordable, will all be luxury housing. So what we have in our neighborhood is not necessarily affordable housing, but it's more affordable than what they'll replace it with. So specifically what we want them to study with respect to affordable housing is that in 7A is the one that affects us most, zone, contextual zone 7A. They're saying all the problems that exist for what they call practitioners, for developers to develop in these zones, and they're trying to correct those. So what we're saying is that those problems that developers have, you're giving it to them, you're giving them the extra 15 feet, and then you're saying, well, you can also have an extra 10 feet if you do affordable housing. The fact that they have problems is actually an asset for obtaining more affordable housing. Don't let them have any increase unless it's affordable housing, unless affordable housing is included. So instead of this studying 1525, study, in other words, height increase of 15 feet if you do nothing, and 25 feet if you also do affordable housing, study 0.25. And that will, at least then, if these changes take place, they will have the social benefit of providing affordable housing. The other thing, just with respect to the mom and pop stores issue, there's one thing that's come to our attention that I think might be worth looking into, and having somebody who knows about these things, knows more about them, look into it, is that it seems to be not just about rent. That we've found stores that lose their lease, and they'll say, well, not only were we, we were just told no lease. Nobody came to us and said, can you, we want to increase no, you're out of here. So what seems to be going on with that is it's a little bit like people remember redlining of the 70s. It's the banks will only give mortgages to buildings if they have what they call if they have high credit tenants. And what are high credit tenants? Tend to be global or at least national stores. So a building owner, and you can say, well, they may be greedy, but they in fact want to take out a mortgage on their building, and they can't get it with the tenants that they have. So they have. So yeah, the banks might actually be, and then you have a situation where if there's several stores in a row, well, yeah, all leases go because they want to merge it, or not necessarily merge it. They want this thing they call straight line retail. So a couple of fancy boutiques don't want a bar in the middle of them. They want all of them to go together, and that seems to be something that is coming from the outside. It's not just the landlord who's saying this is what I want to do, but he's being told, if you want to get your money out of the building, if you want to do improvements on your building, this is what you've got to do.
The other issue which came up a while ago is what they call the 80-20 rule, not the affordable housing, but the issue of co-ops, as you probably know. In the past, you had to get all of your income, or most of it, from your shareholders. And now you can, according to the state changes the law.
Right.
And you can get from your commercial. Well, that's great for the shareholders, because it keeps their maintenance down.
Right.
But it also means that maybe the banks are part of it. If you want to maximize your downstairs income, if you're a co-op on a retail strip, which you may not be. And that's another challenge. I don't bring that up a lot because, I understand the maintenance issues of the shareholders, but it does sometimes mean that the chain is the most viable option for the shareholders. Another wrinkle.
The deck seems to just be stacked in the direction. And sometimes when the deck seems to be stacked in the direction, it means there's something bigger going on.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Community Board 1?
Yes, again, I'm Anthony Natal, I'm the vice chair, and I'm representing Catherine McVeigh, who is at a press conference today, which is part of the James Zuroda hearing on April 30th. She wanted me to mention a couple of things, so she couldn't be here. One thing that we're working on is with the New York Academy of Medicine, in collaboration with Council Member Margaret Chin, initiated an aging-friendly neighborhood study. And we're doing this in collaboration with Wards 2 and 3. There'll be a series of town hall meetings and focus groups, and that's going to take place between April and mid-June. And hopefully that will inform this whole study about how to make our communities more accessible as people age in. Secondly, we had a presentation at our planning committee Monday night about the potential settlement that's going on with the state of New Jersey and ExxonMobil. And it really was very enlightening to hear the whole issue about how this settlement, which is far less than the New Jersey DEP had suggested, will impact what Exxon has to or doesn't have to remediate. And in fact, they probably will not have to remediate anything. And the money, which is far less than was expected, will go into New Jersey's general fund. And so none of it may ever be used. And the issue here is that it really affects the water quality in our communities, but also has an impact on resiliency overall, because all of these wetlands will not be restored in any sense. And so we've passed a resolution on that, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it. And then finally, we have a sidewalk cafe working group. This has become, talk about that institutional knowledge of how we got to certain places in certain neighborhoods about what is allowed and what isn't. And now we even have DOT coming to us with these pop-up cafes. And so there's lots of issues to study around that. And that's really it.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? I just want to say that our, dealing with NYCHR, our councilman, assemblyman, Keith Wright, who is the chair of housing in Albany, he basically has gotten some commitment from the state to put a lot of money, I don't have all the details, I was trying to pull up and wasn't able to, into NYCHR. The commissioner was, we were at a press conference, and the commissioner or chairperson was there also, and she's very committed to getting these repairs done in the NYCHR houses. Also in terms of getting NYCHR housing residents trained for jobs in an appropriate time so that they can get the jobs that are coming out of NYCHR with all the repairs and everything else. So I'm gonna go through and I will send the information out to you in terms of getting it out to the board, but I thought it was very good that our assemblyman Keith Wright was pushing this NYCHR to make sure things happen, the money is there, and getting more money. And I think the governor is supposed to match some of the funds also.
Is that separate from the $101 million from the DA's office?
Oh, yes, definitely. The DA, that's money that he recovered, the DA money, yeah, definitely. It's different.
So this is another part?
Yeah, this is, yeah.
I think that's a good idea, we just heard it for the last 50 years and we haven't gotten
I know,
much.
that's why
I just want to say,
Yeah.
just FYI, so hopefully, that's institutional memory.
Right.
I want to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network, I always forget to do that, but just so you know, they very kindly film us, make the effort to do so, and then run it, so.
Jessica, you have something to say? Any
Yeah,
updates?
also thank CB7.
Yeah, thanks CB7.
Thank you, CB7.
Motion to adjourn?
So
Second?
Second.
In favor? Unanimous.
Were you here? I'm gonna send everybody a link.
Oh, that's you.
Where are you going?